Rolling home, oh rolling home, oh rolling home, they land to thee. Rolling home to Bunny, Scotland, rolling home across the sea.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Bryon of Hessan County and I'm glad that you could join me again today. Today's video is going to be part of a short series that is discussing one of my recent games, the sailing TTRPG Perilous Voyage. In this game, each of the players takes the role of a crew member on a fictional sailing ship going on its important mission into a newly explored sea. In the first video, I will introduce some basic ideas behind the game. Then we'll start addressing specific game mechanics. In Perilous Voyage, we will use several systems combined together in order to create an immersive and interactive system experience that is also quick and easy to set up. Each of these systems will be the focus of its own video. By the time that you reach the end of this short video series, I hope that you will be fully immersed into the basic knowledge and confidence that you need to run a session of Perilous Voyage with your companions. Please feel free to leave any comments or any questions on the videos if you have any that come up, and please be sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on any of the other Perilous Voyage content or any other content that I create here on Hessan County. In this first video in our series, I will be discussing some of the background behind the game and addressing some questions that people may already have about its setting. Perilous Voyage pools much of its inspiration from several different sources. First is the voyages that many countries organized in the late 18th to early 19th centuries into the Pacific and Southern Oceans. The basic idea and understanding of what was in these areas was already known to many Europeans by this time because of some earlier explorations that had occurred, but that understanding was still rather vague, and of course there were many other things that people wanted to potentially explore in this area. For example, the whole reason for the Voyage of the Bounty was to try to find and gather breadfruit, with the idea of using that for the British Navy. Many of these voyages were quite long, going into many years without docking in a fully established port that would allow for major refurbishments of ships or significant crew changes. Sometimes these ships would even go for months without an opportunity to restock on critical supplies like water or food, fresh food. These very long stretches at sea between different islands constantly demanded extremely hard labor and under very poor conditions. This, of course, would have a very significant impact on the crew's health, morale, especially mental health, and also, of course, the equipment and the ship itself. A second major inspiration for this game was the first-hand accounts of many sailors from the period, and also some popular elements from fiction. In particular, the Horatio Hornblower series and some first-hand accounts from ships like the HMS Wagner, the HMS Hermione, and the HMS Bounty I mentioned previously stood out as sources of inspiration for events that might potentially occur in Perilous Voyage. The tensions that can arise aboard a sailing ship from this time period between regular sailors and officers, as well as between officers and other officers, over things like naval discipline, which of course was extremely harsh at the time, unequal treatment, and also class-based discrimination, which also pulled into this sort of dichotomy between officers and sailors, play key roles in both real-life events that led to mutiny and disaster on those ships I mentioned previously, all of which were from the Royal Navy, and a number of the plot lines that were utilized in C.S. Forester's Age of Sails novels, like the Horatio Hornblower series. One thing that I wish to clarify for potential players of Perilous Voyage is that I am not trying to create a true historical simulation, despite maintaining some of the nasty elements that existed in 19th century naval life, like obviously the food and class or rank-based tensions aboard the ship. I don't think I need to explain very much. about the discriminatory and exploitative attitudes that existed in many different European cultures at this time toward anyone who did not finally match the male heterosexual norms that were present, like obviously women, LGBTQ plus persons, so-called. I also likely don't need to remind people about the common negative beliefs that many Europeans from this time period held about people of color, non-Christians, and those of non-European ancestry. I have tried my best not to include these things in the game, and I highly encourage you to create societies that are accepting of gender, racial, religious, and also cultural diversity in your narratives. So, as you might have gotten from the little explanation that I just gave, the idea behind Perilous Voyage is that you are attempting to complete a mission as you are sailing across in this sea. You're also admittedly exploring some, which we're going to touch on a bit more when we look at one of our game mechanics that's being utilized, the Carta system. But also it's important to remember that one of the things that we're trying to do, or at least that I tried to create into Perilous Voyage, and that I encourage you to do, is to potentially explore that sort of rank dynamic, that sort of social tensions and conflict that might end up arising on a sailing ship from this time period, that really sort of built up walls in between your average sailor and officers, which is one of the reasons why when you create a character, you can pick to play an officer of one of several different types, or you could pick to play a regular crew member. Thank you all for joining me today. This was the first video discussing Perilous Voyage, mainly kind of diving a sort of introductory dive into sort of the inspirations and the basic idea behind the game itself. In the next video, we're going to start diving into actual mechanics. In the next particular one, we're going to be starting to look at character creation and also the actual dice mechanics that your players are going to be using to decide how successful their characters are whenever they're doing a complicated action and roleplay. Thank you very much for joining me, and do have a good zone.
If you would like to show your support for this channel or for the Hessan County blog, in the description down below you will find links to the channel coffee and also the itch store. Please feel free to take a look, and thank you for your support.